This video was recorded by the students from the Teaching and Material Design workshop oriented by teacher Jonathan Vasquez. In this moment, we are reading a book entitled A Practical Materials Development Guide for EFL Pre-Service Teachers, Novice, and In-Service Teachers, written by Núñez, Telles Castellanos, and Ramos Alquino. However, this video will be focused on the third chapter, whose name is the Materials Development Scaffolding. Okay, this begins with the following statement that says that teachers are always facing situations that require decision making in their classrooms. In that sense, the authors present us two different scenarios: developing course and its materials, and developing materials for an existing course or a course in progress. The first scenario refers to the idea of teacher as a syllabus designer and also as a material designer. So, in that sense, the teacher will do a needs analysis in order to identify the main problematics and interests from the students to develop an appropriate syllabus and also to be able to design appropriate materials. And the second one refers to teacher as an actor who is only developing materials based on a previous designed syllabus by other person or by the institution. Okay, in that sense, the content of this video will be focused on the 6 main titles that are the ones that you can see in the screen. So we are going to begin.
One thing essentially required for developing materials is a needs assessment or analysis. This consists of an approach to our students in order to know them, to know what they know, to know what they can do and what they need to learn or what they need to do. Teachers have conceptualized needs by distinguishing between objective and subjective needs, and also by differentiating between target and learning needs. Objective needs are derived from factual information about learners, the learner's use of language in real life communication situations, and learners' current language proficiency, and learners' language difficulties. In assessing objective needs, the teachers may include information about students' background, like the country, culture, education, family, profession, age, language, among others. They also must include students' abilities or proficiency in speaking, reading, writing, and listening, and students' needs in regards to their use of English outside the classroom. For the subjective needs, we have that they are the cognitive and affective factors of the learner in their learning process, and they could be like personality, confidence, attitudes, wants and expectations in relation to the learning of the target language, cognitive styles and learning strategies. And so, in assessing subjective needs, teachers may include information about students' attitudes towards the target language and culture, their learning process, and themselves as learners, as well as students' expectations of themselves and of the course, students' underlying essential purposes or lack of purposes in studying the target language, and students' preferences in regards to the way they learn. It is also needed differentiation between learning and target needs as the following ones. The learning needs are defined as what learners need to do in order to learn, or what should be to learn. In this turn, may increase students' motivation and help them to find a purpose and interest in what they are doing in the course. And also, we have the target needs, which are what the learners need to do in the target language. In the foreign language teaching context, the use of skill gained through study and practice cannot be clearly anticipated, as English may be just a requirement for an exit or an entrance exam. Then the students have target needs. Needs assessment is a clearly sensible process to be conducted to translate those identified needs into realistic goals.
It's pretty important to get some resource, and there are a lot. That's the beautiful part of the pedagogy. We are able to use a lot of different resources like observation schemes, notes. In that case, the guides say that the transcriptions from some audio tapes, it's a good resource to use. The biographical data, some surveys, questionnaires, diaries, interviews, um, situations to use the language in a specific context, like being so empiric, I guess. Some grading materials as texts or books, whatever. And finally, the test to measure the level of each student. And in that case, it could be grading or oral. That those are, for example, the ones that we use in our career. So, thank you so much.
In order to have an order and occurrence in materials development, it is important to have some important aspects in language teaching. RICO 2005 highlights two elements to be defined.
First, the approach or method, which involves the nature of language and language learning, and second, the design that will be implemented according to the theory proposed.
It is important to take into account two issues when choosing a learning theory. The first one is related to psycholinguistics. Its main objective of study is the relationship that is established between linguistics knowledge and the mental processes that are involved in it. And the second one is related to the conditions, the environment, and the extralinguistic factors that are involved in it. These methods are crucial to outlining a design that connects practice with theory.
It involves the specific objectives of the method and the selection and organization of language content within it. In other words, the syllabus model.
The transformation that teaching methods have undergone over the years is necessary to understand the evolution and content of materials design.
Teachers must keep abreast of the different methods that may arise day by day to have a better contextualization of the content of their class.
Now we're going to talk about the third subtitle that is called Determining the General Objectives and Goals of the Course. In here, we have to take into account two main terms that are very important in the topic that are goals and objectives. What is a goal and what is an objective? The goals are general statements for the long term purposes of the course. The goals are where we want to be, and the objectives are the steps needed to get there. For other part, Graves presents us the Stern 1992 typology of goals for language learners, which includes four types. The first type is the proficiency goals and include the mastery of the four linguistic skills. The second type is the cognitive goals. In here, we talk about the mastery of linguistic and the cultural knowledge. The third type is the affective goals, which involves the positive attitudes and um, the feelings of the target language. And here, the final one is the transfer goals. And in here, we have to take into account how to learn to meet future challenges. And also, the SDSU Educational Technology presents us a table in which they construct goals and objectives. As we can see here, goals are broad and objectives are narrow. The goals have general intentions and objectives are precise. The goals are intangible and objectives are tangible. And the goals are abstract while the objectives are concrete. And finally, the goals can be validated and objectives can be validated. And based on that, we can say that goals are non measurable and objectives are measurable.
To continue talking about objectives, the website Learn Marketing presents the SMART acronym to characterize them in the field of language learning: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. And there are different typologies of objectives. The first one is by Noonan, which has three approaches: content as knowledge, content as skill, content as attitude, and awareness. Another typology is by Xavier and Gould, and it is divided in five categories. First one, coverage objectives. What will be covered? Second, activity objectives. What the students will do. Third, involvement objectives. How to maximize students' involvement and interest. Fourth, mastery objectives. What the students will be able to do as the result of their time in class. Fifth, critical thinking objectives, which learning skills students will develop. Finally, this third subtitle ends with Rapes, who explains why set goals and objectives in the class. They give a sense of direction and content framework for teachers. They help teachers determine the appropriate content and activities for the course. And they also help students understand what they are doing in the course.
Designing the syllabus, organize it or build it. The meaning of syllabus is a table of contents that embraces all the designs made to develop a language program. It includes linguistic aspects, learning targets, sequencing, and materials. Often, teachers are confused when asked to create a syllabus for their course. This may happen either because they are not acquainted with this term, or the purpose of such task is not clear. In the first scenario, before teachers attempt to organize content, it is crucial to know the institutional requirements, the students' profiles, and the educational policies we are subject to. Acting in response of these aspects allows for an informed decision-making process. In the second scenario, the teacher needs to engage in a process of consultation and negotiation with the actors involved, and they can make questions and objections about the existing syllabus. This allows teachers for fine-tuning the design of the syllabus to meet the students' needs. Then, we need to decide the content to be addressed and the way it will be organized. Teachers should figure out the aspect of language and language learning to be included, what will be emphasized or given more relevance, and what integrates the course itself. Stern presents three types of focal points that lead the process of syllabus design. The first one is language focus, the second one is learning and learner focus, and the third one is social context. In the language focus, we can find several types of syllabus like structural syllabus, functional syllabus, task-based syllabus. We can choose one of these syllabus depending on the way we want to explain the language. For example,
how it is structured, the context, or teaching other subjects with the language. In the second one, learning and learner focus, we can emphasize the teaching using affective goals, interpersonal skills, or learning strategies. In the social context focus, we can lead the learning to the critical thinking, the community's participation, to understand the cultures, or the use of appropriate language. Once the content has been enriched, teachers will be able to make decisions on materials, sequences, scope, and evaluations. We can represent this syllabus in various ways. The first one is a traditional table of contents. The second one is a mind map. And the third one is a spider web. To conclude, there are features to take account when we design a syllabus or materials. For example, the context, or the student's profiles and needs, the reason of the course, and how the course has been described to students.
Chapter 5. Developing the material. All what teachers can do. In the past, material development was seen as a little part of methodology, but here we will demystify this believing. In this chapter, we will see some ideas from great theorists who will show us some basic principles of second language learning that are essential to the development of the material. First principle, achieved impact through variety and attractive presentation. The first of the four strategic components is attention. The instructional design strategies should make use of the curiosity to create enthusiasm in students. Second principle, help learners to feel at ease. Second language acquisition research had revealed that students seem to learn more and in a shorter time when being relaxed and engaged with the activities. Course book must be appropriate to the students so they can learn in a comfortable way. Third principle, apprentissage must be perceived as relevant and useful by the learners. The second strategic component is relevance, to put together the learner's interests and needs by designing goal-oriented tasks. Instructional design strategies should give students the opportunity to choose topics. Third principle, help learners to develop self-confidence. The third strategic component is the confidence. It means creating optimistic expectations for success by informing the students on the requirement and assessments and giving them meaningful challenges and opportunities for an effective learning. Fifth principle, to facilitate students' self-investment. This means helping the learner to make a more efficient use of the resources and to facilitate self-discovery. Instructional design strategies should foster active exploration and discovery. Sixth principle, readiness. Course books must be set in an appropriate level of challenge so that things are neither too difficult or too easy. Maintain thereby students' motivation. Likewise, they must have consistent grammar syllabus and provide appropriate vocabulary and practice with pronunciation work and writing tasks. Seventh principle, create learners' conscious or subconscious attention in linguistics so they become aware of the gap between their interlanguage and their target language.
The eighth principle is to maximize student talking time. As teachers, we must provide students with spaces where they can put into practice their knowledge in the second language, fostering the language use, not just usage. In this way, learners will be encouraged to automatize their knowledge. The positive effects of delayed time, instruction, and exposure. The longer the student remains exposed to the second language, the less chance that such information will remain in short-term memory, and instead it will remain as a meaningful learning. By delaying an assignment, the students will be forced to review the subject and therefore deepen their learning. This principle suggests the need for post-evaluation materials to find out what learners have eventually learned as a result of using them. Always take into account students' different learning styles, such as visual, auditory, kinesthetic, analytic, experiential, global, dependent, and dependent. Each student has their own particular learning style and preferences, multiple intelligences, cultural and educational backgrounds, and language level. Consider students' emotions and affective screen. Individual attitudes, emotions, and feelings affect learning rates. Before preparing a class and designing the material, you must consider prior knowledge, personal experiences, and cultural background. In this way, you will provide the right amount of stimulation for the class. Instructional design strategies should allow time for exploration and exposure. Allow for a silent period at the onset of the instruction until learners have gained sufficient exposure to the target language and confidence in understanding it. Stimulate left and right brain lateralization through intellectual, aesthetic, and emotional involvement. While the left side of our brain processes speech, analysis, time, sequence, and recognizes letters, numbers, and words, the right side processes creativity, patterns, spatial awareness, context, and recognizes faces, places, and objects. Instructional design strategies should give students the opportunity to choose and include thought-provoking topics, introduce a conceptual conflict, and create an atmosphere for inquiry. Offer plenty of free practice. It has the accuracy required to perform new structures. On the other hand, controlled practice seems to have little effect on long-term memory and fluency. Provide opportunities for outcome feedback. You must give intrinsic and extrinsic reinforcement for effort by encouraging enjoyment of learning activities and experiences, providing formative and motivational feedback, and being consistent and objective when giving evaluative feedback. That will increase student satisfaction.
To conclude, I'd like to add 3 remarks that we have to take into account when we give a class. The first one is that to understand a second language in a significant way and to retain it in the long-term memory, learners need to achieve its multidimensional representation, which means that they need to have affective and sensory experiences to be able to connect them with their previous knowledge and to relate them with their own views and their own experiences. Teachers should care about their own teaching process as much as they care for their students' learning process, and this should be reflected in their teaching materials. Fostering curiosity results in desires to explore and discover, but teachers should be aware of the fact that not everyone is equally curious and that certain activities may become a source of anxiety rather than a source of stimulus. That's why it is a duty of educators to recognize individual differences and to accommodate a nicely controlled exploring setting to all learners.
And now the sixth chapter is called Assessing Your Own Materials, that aims to motivate pre-service and in-service teachers to develop their own materials based on their principles, which causes a critical reflection on whether the material satisfies its purpose, since it's involved in the process of evaluating, piloting, and make adjustments. Then here we have 2 steps. The first one is evaluating materials. We can put the example of an author named Tomlinson. Why? Because he made a course for teachers called Development Materials for Teacher Development. And there what he wanted to do was motivate teachers to develop that materials and become good language teacher. For that, he proposed a list of characteristics with a specific procedure to get to it. Some characteristics are be patient and supportive with your students. It could be in the instruction of an activity. Have a good sense of humor, thinking about something that could make laugh to your students. Be enthusiastic, positive, and confident, but will help to improve the classroom environment. Be interesting, stimulating, and creative, mainly in the materials. Be a good communicator, trying to make students understand what you say in an easy way. Also, be flexible and take initiative in class. Be sensitive about the needs and the wants of your students, analyzing always the context of them. Think critically about your own theoretical and methodological knowledge, and try to find procedures in the pedagogy. And
the next characteristic is makes principled selection from her or his repertoire in relation to the needs, wants, learning style, preference, and expectation of her learners. Her personality, belief, and teaching style preference, the social and educational culture, and its pressure is giving varying learner profiles and asked to design and justify different materials for them. The another characteristic is a proficient user of the target language, and its pressure is given to reach exposure to language and use plus focused attention on the future being taught. And the last characteristic is has awareness of the realities of the target language and of the L1 and L2 culture, giving awareness task to do themselves prior to developing awareness task for learners. It's not the intention to determine if or not you are a good language teacher or English teacher. Instead of the purpose is to take advantage of the list to establish criteria like a guideline, I don't know, a self-assessment process of your own materials. In order to do so, we have selected some of the some characteristics to correspond the procedure to design a self-assessment for materials. We have taken into account the humor, the engagement, the interesting stimulation and creative, the sensitive to needs and wants of the learners, and the self-reflections. Each one has three important topics that it's like outstanding, good quality, and could improve. This the previous checklist provides a guideline for the teacher, but it's not like a rule. It's
Piloting and making adjustments. Piloting materials refers to evaluating our materials with the help of students, asking for their opinions about the material. The idea is that we can detect problems and improve them. For this, it is necessary to take into account several aspects. The first one is the material must not have grammatical errors. The second one is the material must be clear. Another point is the complexity. Is our material suitable for the course, or very complex, or very simple? Another point is to do different activities, that students enjoy doing different things and not the same in all classes. The same crosswords, the same word searches. The teacher must be creative and innovative in this part. Coherence between the topics and the material. If we are teaching the simple present, we can't do activities with possessive adjectives or something like that. Another item is that many times is not taking into account is that distribution. Sometimes the guides are very saturated in image or only text. So here it is important to highlight the balance between both. Finally, the personal trait. If we are going to be teachers, it is very important to be creative, innovative with materials, motivate students, taking into account their needs, age, level, learning styles. Also, that these materials must change over time. They must be modified because we cannot use the same materials from 10 years ago and expect that today the students learn the same as the students than 10 years ago. This is impossible. So the important thing it is to focus on our group and be very creative.